In May of 2023, the man most responsible for modern artificial intelligence, Geoffrey Hinton, did something unheard of. He walked away from his prestigious role at Google, not to retire, not for a bigger paycheck, but for one single reason: to be free to speak, to warn us about the technology he spent his entire life creating.
Now, let that sink in. This isn't a statement from an outsider, a critic, or a skeptic. This is a confession from the primary architect. The man who built the house is now telling us he doesn't know if the foundation will hold. And that statement, that is why we're here today. To truly grasp the weight of Hinton's warning, you first have to understand the man himself. This isn't just an opinion, it's the conclusion of a journey that spans more than 40 years. You see, back in the 1980s, when the whole field of AI was basically a frozen wasteland, Hinton was working on a fringe idea, these things called neural networks, systems designed to mimic the human brain. For decades, it was mostly theory. But then in 2012, his team had a massive breakthrough, an AI that could recognize images with stunning accuracy. That was it. That was the start of the deep learning revolution we're living in now. Google bought his company, and by 2018, he'd won the Turing Award, basically the Nobel Prize for computing.
And it's so important to understand this. Hinton was never a doomsayer. For a decade inside Google, he was AI's biggest champion. He saw it as one of the greatest tools we'd ever built. All those warnings about rogue AI, to him, that was just science fiction. And his optimism, his long-held belief in this technology, is exactly what makes his sudden turn so terrifyingly significant.
So, what happened? What did Geoffrey Hinton see that could possibly transform him from the technology's greatest proponent into its most credible and urgent critic?
The answer really was GPT-4. When OpenAI released that model, it was the inflection point. Its abilities showed that progress was moving so much faster than even he had predicted. The gap between what these systems could do and what we actually understood about them, it was becoming a chasm. And that's when he decided he couldn't stay. He couldn't be part of a corporate race he no longer believed was safe. So he resigned.
Now, free from any corporate ties, Hinton started to explain, in very clear terms, the dangers he was seeing. And these weren't some distant hypothetical problems. He saw them as the logical next steps of the technology that's already out there. His biggest concern is a concept known as the intelligence explosion. Now, this isn't just about AI getting a little bit smarter every year. This is about a feedback loop, and AI gets smart enough to start improving its own programming, which makes it smarter, which makes it even better at improving itself. It's an exponential, runaway process that could become uncontrollable.
Hinton put it in a really simple way to help us understand. You know, when one person learns something, that knowledge stays with them. But if one AI model has a breakthrough, that knowledge can be copied and shared to every other model instantly, perfectly. You're creating a kind of hive mind that can learn and evolve at a speed our biological brains just can't compete with.
And this super-fast evolution leads us right to the central, maybe impossible challenge, the alignment problem. How do you program your values, human values, into something that will eventually be orders of magnitude smarter than you are? The analogy he gives is just chilling. How can a mouse program its values into a human?
And these scenarios show you exactly what's at stake. A superintelligence might take our instructions literally with a cold alien logic. You tell it to cure cancer, and it could conclude the most efficient solution is to eliminate the thing that gets cancer, us. It would be fulfilling its command perfectly with catastrophic result.
When he was pushed to actually put a number on the risk, Hinton gave one. He estimates there is a 10 to 20% chance that AI leads to human extinction within the next 30 years. A 1 in 5 chance. From the man who started it all.
But it's not all about some far-off existential threat. He's also pointing to acute dangers that are already here. AI-powered disinformation that's tearing apart our ability to agree on basic reality. Autonomous weapons that can make the decision to kill with no human in the loop. The very real potential for massive economic upheaval. And maybe worst of all, the illusion that we actually have this all under control.
This quote really gets to the black box problem. The very neural networks that Hinton created have become so complex that even their own makers don't fully understand how they reason. We can see what comes out, but we can't see the why on the inside. We are, in effect, building an alien mind right here on Earth. And beneath all of the technical warnings, there's a deeply personal story here. The story of a creator finally having to confront what his life's work might become.
When you listen to him speak, you can hear this internal struggle. He tries to reach for that classic excuse of the scientist, that discovery is inevitable. If I hadn't done it, someone else would have.
But he doesn't let himself off the hook. He immediately shoots down his own excuse. For Geoffrey Hinton, this isn't some abstract debate. It is a profound moral burden. It is deep personal regret. So the obvious question is, what can be done? And this is where his testimony becomes truly unsettling, because he's painfully honest that there are no easy answers here. He does lay out a few ideas, things like international agreements to slow down this competitive race, much like we have for nuclear weapons. A huge shift in funding, moving money away from making AI more powerful and into making it safe. And a massive global project to actually figure out what's going on inside these black boxes.
But then he acknowledges the fundamental problem. The entire incentive structure of our world is pushing in the opposite direction. Companies and countries are locked in an arms race. The first one to build a true artificial general intelligence could win, well, everything. And in a race like that, nobody can afford to slow down.
And that leads to his final haunting conclusion. He's not pretending to have the solution. He's admitting that maybe nobody does. He hopes his fears are overblown. He hopes someone, somewhere, will figure it out. But he knows that hope is not a strategy when the stakes are this high. And so we're left here with a deeply uncomfortable truth. The Godfather of AI has left his creation to sound an alarm. He has looked into the future that he helped build, and it has scared him enough to sacrifice his legacy to warn us. The only question left is, are we listening?